Here we are again. Welcome to the show, everybody. Gen X News. Of course, we are streaming live today on X, Rumble, and YouTube. So I'm gonna try to behave. We're also streaming on my guest Ryder Lee's YouTube. So we're gonna behave. No clips. No breaking the laws. I'm gonna do this one. Good. No swearing. No bad words. Before I bring Ryder on, I want show and tell time. My husband bought me a book. I was listening to the audio version, but he actually bought me the book. And this fits most of the shows that I talk. I talk about MkUltra and stuff like that all the time. So here we go. We got it. The Chaos. This is the one Candace Owens is reading. Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. Haven't cracked into it yet. Going to. It's a thick book. I bet you it's got, yeah, look at how much references. This is just the references right here. Stock full of good information. So Chaos, I'll let you guys know how it is. Candace Owens was reading it. I base a lot of the stuff I talk about on this book, so it's going to be fascinating. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us. We are going to be talking about Ryder Lee's documentary, A Clockwork Shining. I always go to say Clockwork Orange. I said that on my last show. I made a bloop. It's A Clockwork Shining, and he'll let you know what it's all about. But if you're a big fan of Stanley Kubrick and MkUltra, it all comes together in his documentary, and he's going to lay out his evidence for why Stanley Kubrick was telling you about the MkUltra program in The Shining, actually. So before I bring Ryder on, remember to subscribe to the platforms of your choice, whether it's X Rumble or YouTube. We got genxonx.com. That is the website. On that website, you will find the links to the live stream. You'll find the links to the audio podcast, which is growing. I was surprised to see the audience growing in the past few weeks. Got people from Ukraine, Israel, Japan, all over the place. It was great. You'll find that there. You also can be a subscriber on X for a monthly fee. I'm working on a little mini documentary on Ted Bundy and this location I went and filmed them at, and some MkUltra. So I'm doing a little mini clip documentary, went filming some stuff. That's for subscribers, eZine for subscribers, stuff like that. So genxonx.com. And of course, if you want to be a subscriber on X, the handle is GenX News on X. So that's the announcements today. I'm not going to wait much longer. Let's bring Ryder in, and we're going to talk The Shining and MkUltra. Welcome to the show, Ryder.
What's up, Melissa? It's good to see you. And guess what? I also have chaos. What do you know? Twinning.
That's hilarious.
Boom.
My husband ordered it for me. He's like, something's coming for you, and I think you'll really like it. And he sends me so much information. He used to work in intelligence stuff. He sends me stuff all the time and videos. I was just watching stuff he sent me early, so this was cool.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I actually haven't got a chance to read all of it yet because it is a really thick book, but I've skimmed through it and like the details and everything that's in there, like you were mentioning with the references, oh, it's, at this point, there's like no denying that the CIA had a hand in literally the counterculture of the 60s. And we get into that in our movie as well, and all that stuff that was going on in Laurel Canyon and Lookout Mountain. And it's like, it's undeniable at this point. There's so much evidence that points to that, and the fact that
yes.
they were all over the CIA, the LSD phenomenon, and they essentially created the counterculture to destroy the anti-war movement. That's exactly what was going on.
And it certainly destroys the traditional cultures for sure. The family, it creates all sorts of mayhem outside of that. Now, pertaining to The Shining, I want to know when the first time you saw The Shining was, and what prompted you to start looking at it in this way of MkUltra.
Well, the first time that I'd seen it, it was a long time ago, like when I was really young, when I was a kid. And to be honest, I did not like the movie. I thought that it was boring. It was uninteresting. Nothing really happens in the entire movie. And it wasn't until I watched it in order to bring Jay Widener on my channel, because he's the one that really started the entire theory that The Shining is Kubrick's confession to faking the moon landing. And I was bringing him on to interview him on my show, Raised by Giants. And I was just watching it again and again because I was trying to find details that maybe other people hadn't seen before. and then it kind of all like unfolded before me, and I hadn't realized it before because I thought that the moon landing thing was definitely interesting. It's one of the ones that people love to hate. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
They're
mhm.
like, "Oh, well, this is a super wacky theory, and I don't hold any merit to it." All the while, they actually do, and they actually really do like the theory. You know, it's like one of
Yeah.
those where they're like, "Oh, this is stupid," but in the back,
I
they're like, "Oh, this is actually a really good theory."
I have friends who interviewed that guy that was on Joe Rogan not too long ago about the moon landing theory and his
Bart
book and stuff.
Sibrel, and I had
Yeah,
him on my show, Melissa.
he's
I had him on
good.
my show like I don't know, almost 2 years ago, and I didn't get any bump from Joe Rogan having him on. I'm like, I got Bart
Interesting.
Sibrel in the title of this freaking video. You're telling me that nobody, like the
Wow.
biggest podcast in the world, has Bart Sibrel on there, and no
It's the
one looks up,
algorithm.
puts
I'm
Bart Sibrel
trashed
into the
by the
search engine?
algorithm.
But it's just
It's
unfortunate. I
unfair.
think it's getting better. It's getting better now that we have this, the things that are going on. I think it's going to get a lot better. But there for a while, it was just like it was just
But
like doing the definition of
yeah,
insanity, right? I was just doing the same thing over and over, and it's like it's not
what
getting me anywhere.
how did you come across, oh, what's his name work about The Shining and the Moonland? Like, how did you like, were you into conspiracy theory?
Yeah, I had always thought that there was a lot of things that was wrong from with our
J
reality that we
Jay
find ourselves in.
Weidner, sorry.
From a really young age, I was like, something's not right here, something's not going on, because no one could like tell me because I would ask questions. You know how like when you're a kid and you would ask like a lot of questions, and I think every kid naturally does. And none of the answers to the questions that I were asking was being answered, adequately. And I'm like, there's something wrong with this entire equation here. There's something going on, and I can't quite put my thumb on it, because I'm a kid. And then later on, I watched the movie Zeitgeist, which then, blew the lid off of all kinds of things. It goes through every section of our reality through religion. It gets into 9/11, then it gets into the banking system and that our money is essentially worthless because it was changed from a gold-backed currency to a legal tender. And then it was just like it was all there. And then I just started going down and really thinking about it, and it just opened my mind to so many other possibilities, because that's one of the things, like being in the community, is like, oh well, if they're lying about this, then what else are they lying about? They got to be lying about
Mhm,
a bunch of other stuff. So it just kind of went for there from there. But Jay Weidner, I had heard him on some shows in I think around 2018,
mhm.
2019 area, and I wasn't familiar with his Kubrick work on Stanley Kubrick, because he had done two documentaries before this one. This one's kind of like the quasi third installment of his series.
Right,
So the
right.
first one is Kubrick's Odyssey 1 and Kubrick's Odyssey 2, and this one's A Clockwork Shining to Kubrick's Odyssey 3. So it's like a quasi third installment of his series completing the trilogy. And I had just heard him on someone's show, and then I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, come on my show and talk about it." It was originally about like the Cross of Henday was what we were talking about, in these like cycles, and the Kali Yuga cycles, and that's what our
Mhm.
first show was really about. And then we got into JFK, and the next time that I brought him back on, and then then I had looked more into him, and I realized that he had done all these movies about Kubrick, and I was like, okay, well, come back on and let's talk about Kubrick. Then I was like, and I had discovered this theory. I'd put everything together. It's essentially my theory as what A Clockwork Shining is about.
Mhm.
And I mean, of course, other people contributed to it as well. Everyone in the documentary 100% contributed to it. But I was, once I realized exactly what was going on with The Shining, I reached out to Jay and I was like, hey, we need to make a documentary about this. And he was like, yeah, we do. And instead of doing A Clockwork Shining first, we did another movie first. So we did JFKX first. And that is
I
also
saw
on.
that.
Yeah, that's me doing the
Good.
voiceover work in JFKX, and I edited it and directed it and put it all together. So that was all me as well. And of course, Jay Whitney, that was his theory. So we did JFKX first in order to fund our second movie, which is the movie that we originally wanted to do, Clockwork Shining.
That's fantastic. So when did like what was it that gave you your aha moment when you're watching The Shining to say, "Hey, I think this is about I think Stanley's trying to tell us about MkUltra program."
The first aha moment was whenever Danny turns around and sees the twins in the background, and there's the Monarch poster on the wall behind them
Oh, in the games room.
in the games room. Now, that I'm not professing to be the first person to see that. Several people have seen that poster before me. Okay, so I'm not saying that that's something that I only seen. Several people, and I've been saying that because people try to come up and say none of this is new, blah 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 blah. Well, there is a lot of new things that I 100% know for a fact no one has ever talked about or seen before that we talk about in A Clockwork Shining. But regardless, I saw the poster in the background and I immediately looked it up. I was, researching about it and had seen what other people had been talking about referring to the poster, and they never mentioned Monarch MkUltra. They kept going on about that it's referring to Monarch Mountain or Monarch Ski Resort in Colorado,
Yeah.
and then also the poster looks like a minotaur in the background, and they kept going on about the minotaur, and I'm like, this isn't what it really is, but no one ever mentioned Monarch MkUltra, and immediately when I seen it,
Here,
I
I'll pop
knew,
it
and
up.
then that opened up everything else to here. Actually, I'll show you the here it is. I got it up on the screen. I don't know if you can share it, but this is the Monarch
Mhm.
poster that's in the background when Danny
Yeah.
turns around and sees the twins
Yep.
for the first
There it
time, and
is.
that's what sparked the entire theory. And then once I went back and watched it from the very beginning, everything else started to make sense.
And is Monarchs an earlier name of MkUltra? Is that why that made that connection? Is that true? Is that what it is?
It's a sub project of
A
MkUltra.
sub-project. Okay, well, that's interesting. So maybe he's talking about something even more specific.
Yeah, and Mark Devlin, you watched the movie? Did you watch it? You watched the Clockwork Shining?
Yes, I watched it
Yes.
again today before
Oh,
I came on.
thank you, thank you.
Yes,
I really
it was
appreciate it.
good. It was great. I bought it because I didn't want to rent it for 24 hours because I wanted my husband to see it. So
Oh, that's awesome. What did he think? Did he
yeah.
like it?
Yeah, he did. He did. There was some interesting stuff. He thought, "Oh wow, MkUltra, Stanley Kubrick," and it's I mean, I can't speak for him. He'd have to be more specific because I mean, like I said, he did work in intelligence for a little bit with military, and he was a cop for a very long time. Now he's a truck driver. He's like, to heck with all that stuff. But so he can tell when something's a psyop. Like he knows when he's like they're always messing with us. Like he knows. And so it's like he gets it probably more than I do.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it and bought it. Really appreciate it. And it's
And
always great
I'm
when you're talking with someone and they've like seen your work or like
well,
watched your
and I'm
movie.
popping this up here. I'm recommending everybody right now to go out and either rent or purchase it on Prime, A Clockwork Shining, Kubrick's Odyssey 3. There it is. So please support Ryder and with that because that's how Ryder's able to keep making more content, more films and funding stuff because everything like it's a lot of work even to make little clips for his podcast and like it's a lot of work that goes
Yeah,
into this.
when you're a one man operation, things really take a toll on you a lot. So really appreciate the shout out, and I hope people go and definitely watch it. And we kind of don't ruin or spoil the whole thing here, but it's so when I saw the Monarch poster, I was like, okay, so let's go back to the beginning of this film and let's try and dissect this from the very beginning. So whenever Jack goes to Ullman in the very beginning of the movie, which is unlike any other Kubrick movie that's ever been made, the dialogue between Ullman and Jack essentially give away the entire plot of the movie. Ullman says almost everything verbatim as to what happens to Jack in the rest of the movie.
Right.
And that's really unlike Kubrick to do something like that. He doesn't really foreshadow. Well, he foreshadows, but he foreshadows in
Not so
more of
outright.
it's more in symbolism. And that's one of the things that Kubrick was like completely against in doing, is giving away the entire plot of the movie within the dialogue of the characters, which is a mistake that many filmmakers today now do. They leave
Oh,
no mystery to the movie or no mystery to the film. It's just
that's
uh,
why their movies suck.
exactly, and they just explain like any mystery that may be set up. It's then explained later on within the dialogue, so it doesn't. There's no mystery box. I remember listening to J.J. Abrams on a TED talk, and he was essentially like, "You got to have a mystery box. You got to set
Mhm.
up your mystery box in within the first like 10 minutes of the movie, and when you set up that mystery box, people continue to watch because the audience wants to try and figure it out." And that's what and JJ Abrams has been pretty good with that, besides like the Star Wars stuff and some other films. But for the most part, that's the way that a movie is supposed to be structured, especially when you're doing a thriller or a suspense movie. You want to keep
Mhm.
the audience intrigued by that mystery, and you want them to try and start to figure it out as the characters within the movie are figuring it out. And Cadu Lake is probably the best example of a modern film that does it perfectly. And it was produced by M. Night Shyamalan. It's on
Mhm.
HBO, called Cadu Lake. It's an amazing film. It's in my top
He's
10
he's
favorite
really
movies.
good at he's really good at mystery boxes, I'll tell you that.
He is really good, fantastic at mystery box, but some of them like really fall flat, like The Village and The Happening. It
Yeah.
was garbage movies, but for the most part. But if people are interested in seeing the way that you're supposed to create that mystery box and tell the story through actually the camera and not telling the story through the dialogue of the characters, watch Cowdew Lake, because you have to pay attention to the movie or you have absolutely no idea what's going on. You're going to be completely lost. And even after the
Right,
movie was over, I was still lost. I
right. There's
stayed
a
up for like
well,
4 hours after the movie was over trying to figure out what I had just watched. And those are the
isn't
best kind of movies for me.
isn't that kinda what happens with The Shining, is people go
Yes.
back and watch it because they're like, this doesn't feel like a horror movie, but you feel weird about it, and it's because of how he's designed it, the spatial stuff. He does all this stuff that makes like, it's not really one person dies technically, you know. I don't wanna ruin any plot lines, people, if in case you haven't seen it, but, but there's something really weird that makes you feel spooked out about it, so it's like you have to go back and keep watching it 'cause you get something different every time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was really focused on. I was like, because this movie's been dissected and turned upside down, and probably a lot of things put in there that doesn't make any kind of sense. People trying to put two and two together. It's kind of really indicative of the community in general and as a whole. They're trying to fit a square cube into a circle slot, or a triangle slot. It just doesn't fit. So they end up making up their own ideas and trying to shoehorn things in there that doesn't fit. Trying to put a freaking size 15 foot into a size 10 shoe, and it just doesn't work. But as I was like watching the movie over and over again, I'm seeing these like little details that really hint at that this is something more than what people think that it is. Because again, there's so many theories. There's the Holocaust theory. There's the Native American theory. There's the theory that all this is happening inside of Jack's head. There's the theory that all of it's happening inside of Wendy's head. There's the moon landing theory. So as I was watching it, I was like, am I really going to find anything in here that's going to be any different? Because the Monarch poster isn't really enough to go off of to create an almost 2 hour long movie.
Right.
You have to
So
have
you
other
want
details
some
and
more.
other things. So I'm watching it over and over again. I'm trying to pick up on little details and things that people might have missed that I can relate to this being an experiment up at the Overlook. And one of the first things was that Wendy is reading a book by an intelligence officer, J.D. Salinger, called Catcher in the Rye. And The Shining came out in 1980, and both assassination attempts that happened that involved Catcher in the Rye were the assassins had Catcher in the Rye on their person at the time came within a year after the release of The Shining.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had written some notes down at the Catcher in the Rye, and that's a big like a trigger that's going on. But so I just wanted to touch bases on the fact that you're saying they laid it out in the first 10 minutes, the storyline. So did that prompt you to think that there's another storyline and subtext? Is that where you were going with that? Like
Yes,
there's
it made
another
me.
plot that we don't know about?
Yes, there's something beneath the surface of the film that is going over people's heads. And when you look at, MK Ultra Manchurian style candidate theories and what people believe is going on there, and you relate that to Catcher in the Rye, and many people have related that book to being an MK Ultra Manchurian style candidate mind control trigger. Okay, John Hinckley Jr. had it on his person. Mark David Chapman had it on his person. And what is Jack doing throughout pretty much the entire movie? He's trying to kill his family.
Yeah.
He's
He's
essentially
delving
being
into madness.
programmed to kill his family because it's an operation that's going on up there. And Ullman and his assistant, what is his name? Bill Watson.
Watson, yeah, he's the odd guy out there.
He's the very odd guy, and he doesn't do anything. He just kind of stands there and he says maybe 2 or 3 words in the entire movie.
Like he's there observing.
He's the observer. He's the real one that's running the entire operation. The guy that looks like JFK, which is Ullman, is like the front person.
Oh, I get it. The people in Denver. You mentioned that.
And they
They
say
they,
that
they say
so many
that.
times. They say
Mhm.
there's a clip in there of how many times they say our people in Denver in the movie. And
Yeah.
it's like 5 times.
And so that you think that quiet guy might represent that?
That's what we were going to kind of get into in the movie, but we really just didn't have enough time. So that's kind of like a snippet of information that's actually not in there because we wanted to relate Bill being related to Sidney Gottlieb, which was the head of the MkUltra programs, but it's very difficult to
Mhm.
find any pictures or any really identification or actually any stories or any
You can't get a link
documentation
to it.
that's involved with Sidney Gottlieb because he was a very private person. Very few photos even exist of him, and some of the video that exists of him, he's like pretty much covering his face. There's one video that I found that he's like playing tennis on a tennis court, and by the time that you actually get to see who it is that's out there playing tennis as he's walking back inside, he's got his head like shielded down into his arm. So it
Right.
was the few existing photos that I could find of Sidney Gottlieb are the ones that are in the movie.
So how does the Catcher in the Rye show up in this? Because it's mentioned that The Catcher in the Rye was a book that the people who assassinated Reagan and John Lennon read. What's going on, and where is The Catcher in the Rye and the Shining? Like, where does Kubrick allude to The Catcher in the Rye, and what's so important about the book?
Okay, hold on. Let me find the slide here, and I'll actually bring it up. Where is it? Okay, so whenever we first see Wendy and Danny in The Shining, when they're at their apartment in Boulder, because Wendy and Danny and Jack, they live in Boulder, and then they're traveling to the hotel, and eventually they have to move there because Jack got the job.
Right.
And that's whenever the doctor comes and visits Wendy and Danny in their apartment to assess Danny to see if he had what was going on with him and why he was receiving his visions, which is another really interesting aspect of this whole thing because she says that the reason that he experiences these types of episodes and has these types of vision is through self hypnosis. she says it's like self-hypnosis, and that kind of relates to these these types of programs and these types of MkUltra programs. I mean, that's what they were. There were several MkUltra sub projects that were attempting to unlock psychic abilities within the patient or within the subject that they were using these techniques on.
And so I remember in your documentary you showed that clip of Britney Spears where she did an interview and she was triggered and she went all weird and then she composed herself. Is that kind of like the same thing where someone, I don't know, maybe do they get a phone call and they say some line from The Catcher in the Rye and someone goes crazy?
Well, anything can technically be a trigger, according to some of the MkUltra victim survivors, like Kathy O'Brien, that is in our movie. Like, things can be certain phrases, colors, sounds, things that you may read can be a trigger phrase for you to essentially activate this type of behavior within you. So you're essentially programmed with a certain word, and several people have believed that Catcher in the Rye has some sort of trigger word or trigger phrase within the book that whenever someone may read it and they obsess over it. I mean, there's been several people that have supposedly been obsessed with the book, and it's not been verified, but Oswald was Lee
Mhm.
Harvey Oswald was said to have been obsessed with Catcher in the Rye. So people believe that there's like a phrase or a word that's within the book that may trigger them to commit these heinous acts on others.
Right. Yeah, which is kind of scary because you never know. Like when I saw that, I seen that interview with Britney before I'd seen it on a documentary, and I felt really awful for her. And you got to wonder how they use these techniques, and because the CIA, all these places, they're invested in Hollywood, music industry. I just, it seems so cruel. I mean, it seems like a really cruel thing to do to somebody. And then there's this idea that, they're basically with MKUltra creating assassins or and mind control and truth serums or something like that. So I don't, it just, whenever I see this stuff, I'm like, wow, those people didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, it's like what we were talking about when you were on my show last week or the week before. We were talking about how Jim Jones would essentially, mind control, like he would drug these people and then make them believe that they had done something that they hadn't, so that he could miraculously heal them. Then I mentioned the Hashishin order of Islam, where they would essentially do the same thing. It's essentially like it's mind control. You're manipulating the person's mind to make them believe something is real when it's not. Or you can do it the opposite way and make them believe that something is real when it's not. It can
Yeah.
work both ways.
Well, because even in the movie, Jack Nicholson seems like he's seeing, like they're seeing ghosts, they're seeing things that Wendy doesn't even see. So it's really interesting that you say that. And
That's
there's
because
also the
her mind hasn't been taken over.
yeah,
Her mind hasn't been fractured like Danny's
trauma.
mind has. She hasn't had the trauma yet, right? But
And
Danny has. Danny had the trauma because
from his
Jack
father.
injured Danny's arm and broke his arm whenever he.
And there's a subcontext even below that about other abuses, but I'm reading a lot of stuff about that. Like I was watching that interview with that woman. Oh, I forgot her name now. It was in my head, but she was talking about she was a sex slave and abused and used by like Pierre Elliott Trudeau and a whole bunch of people. And she was saying that trauma, they're breaking down trauma, and they get you to be a sex slave and do all that stuff, but it also creates a psychic ability,
That's right.
incidentally.
That's what several of the victims also mention as well, including Kathy O'Brien. She says that it unfortunately unlocks or brings that ability to the forefront of the mind, because I believe that we all have the ability to be psychic on one level of or another. I think that we have all experienced it, whether it's of an intuitive nature or if it's like way more direct. I mean, I've experienced it pretty much my entire life, and I've been experiencing
Mhm.
it more and more as of late, like where I'll think of a friend that I haven't heard from in a long time, and
Mhm.
almost immediately after I think of them, they're messaging me or calling me. Like
It's
in
almost like you're like a beacon or something, right?
Yeah, that's what it seems like, and I think that this is like we're just in like an infinite data field of things because there's other things that happen to me too where I'll have an idea to do something and I don't end up doing the idea, but then a few days later I'll see someone have do that exact same thing that I thought
Yeah,
of doing. And I was like, well, that's freaking impossible. How can they know? Were they just in my mind? But I think that it's just some kind of
collective of
Cl
information.
yes, that's just out there, and some people can tap into it, and some people like, there's a certain amount of people that all get the same type of I know it sounds super woo-woo, and it was super out
No,
there,
no,
but
no, no, you're probably not gonna get too woo for me. It's okay.
that's the only thing that I can put together in my mind because that has happened to me, like, several times over and over and over again, and I'm like, "Okay, well, anytime that I have a thought or an idea, I just need to immediately do it because if I don't, then I know for a fact somebody else eventually, either tomorrow, the next
You
day, or
gotta
next
jump on
week,
it.
they're gonna do it. Yeah.
They're gonna do it, yeah, exactly. So, there's a lot of scenes in The Shining that there's spatial scenes, the spatially, the whole place doesn't make sense. It's like it's ever shifting and changing, like things happen in a dream or your mind. But there's also scenes where items appear and they disappear and they do strange things. I never caught that when I was younger until I was older and I started to there were so many cool websites back in the early 2000s about The Shining and stuff like that, and I would read them. I don't know, they're gone somewhere. I don't know where they are anymore, but it's something you guys talk about, the spatial stuff and things being there and not being there.
Yeah, like this one here, this is there's no hedge maze in behind the overlook. The first opening establishing shot of the overlook, there's no hedge maze, which people have said they combat a lot of these as but it's still continuity errors. A continuity error is when something was there previously in the shot and then it's not there, or something has been
Mhm.
moved, or that I mean, Kubrick should have known that there wasn't a maze in behind the establishing shots because the top photo of this panel was shot in Oregon at Timberline
Yeah.
Lodge. All the
Yep.
exterior shots and the rest of the film was shot on sets in England. But he should have known that there wasn't going to be a maze in the background of the establishing shot in Oregon because there is no maze in Oregon. The hotel doesn't have a maze. Okay.
That is, I never even saw that before. I'm seeing this for the first time that the maze isn't there in the overhead flight, the helicopter scene,
That's right.
that
And
aerial scene.
you also have the tie on Jack's. Several people have already pointed this out. A lot of this stuff isn't in our movie, but some of it is. The tie looks like it's the same pattern of the maze. Uh,
Mhm.
Sticker disappearing on Danny's door. We weren't the first person to see that. There several people
Mhm.
have seen this as Dopey the dwarf. So when the first time right before Danny sees his vision, there's a Dopey the dwarf sticker on the left hand side, and then whenever the doctor comes to visit him and examine him, the sticker's gone. The Kool-Aid on top of the fridge. Did I bring this up with you whenever I had you on my show with the Kool-Aid? Because this was being shot during the exact same time.
No! Kool-Aid, yes. Jim Jones, drink the Kool-Aid. No, we never talked about that.
Man, I got some comments on that video. Everyone was so upset because apparently it wasn't Kool-Aid that they
No, it
drank.
wasn't Kool-Aid, but that's a small thing. The notion was drinking the Kool-Aid. That was the quote right away. It wasn't Kool-Aid, but it doesn't matter. It's what's in the public's mind, what the CIA put in the public's mind in the story that they told everybody. That's the point. They're missing the point.
Yeah, and what actually what I looked it up to find out what it
It's like
exactly was.
it was some kind of grape aid or I don't know, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was some kind of mixed drink or something, so it's very
And
similar.
most of them didn't drink the Kool-Aid. Most of them got injected in the arm or shot. So the drink the Kool-Aid thing is like, yeah.
So that event happened in 78, right?
Mhm. And this
Okay,
movie was released in
being
'80.
yeah, the movie was being filmed during the time that
Mhm.
the Jim Jones stuff was happening. Continuity error with the plastic tarp in the background of the set when Danny's driving around on his, which is a little small minor detail, but this has to
Flavor
pass
Aid.
through so many people's hands, and so many people have to look at this stuff. And if it gets past Stanley, then is it going to get past all these other people? And also up here on the
Mm.
wall, the candles and the lights on the wall where my cursor is looks like 11s. There's so much 11
Oh,
symbolism within the Shining. The double, all the doors are pretty much
the
double doors.
twins.
There's you got the twins, look like 11.
Yep.
So this one is the chair disappearing behind Jack. So this is
Yep.
all in the same scene. The chair's there in one shot. The next shot it's gone, and then the next shot it's reappeared. With a little table beside of it. Little
Shout out to Sean Thompson. He said the right name, Flavor Aid.
Flavor Aid. That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's go. Oh, this is the teddy bear one where my audience has seen these a lot, so they'll probably be complaining. Oh, you're just doing the same thing.
It's all good. It's all
This
good.
this teddy bear looks like it's getting a hard on from the fire truck coming up. And this is also where Wendy picks up the bat off of the back of the couch. But there's another one where the bat is also spotted throughout the movie. So whenever Jack is going to look at the maze when he's throwing the tennis ball against the wall and is bouncing off of
Oh,
the wall, he looks down. He's making eye
like they
contact with the
bring it with
bat.
them.
With the bat. So it was downstairs on the couch earlier in the movie, and then it appears upstairs in their apartment that they're living in, where Wendy
Mhm.
picks it up off of the back of the couch. Then you got the cartoon character here holding a bat, and people have pointed out that this Goofy doll looks very similar to the outfit that Wendy is wearing, but it's just a Goofy doll. That's the bat that he hits it. So this one is a door in the background. Whenever Danny first sees room 237, there's a door that's shut in the background, and then in the next shot, it's open. Carpet pattern. This is all moonlight. Oh, this is
Okay.
foreshadowing. Foreshadowing from Kubrick early in the movie with the bear that Danny's laying on when the doctor's
Yeah.
examining him, and then the bear later on when Wendy goes up there, because then she's now been traumatized. So now Wendy is susceptible to the MkUltra mind manipulation. I mean, that's exactly like what Grady was talking to Jack about whenever Wendy takes his body into the storage room.
Storage room.
Okay, so that whole dialogue between Grady and Jack in that scene is very important. They essentially switch it to see the first time that Jack meets Grady is in the bathroom, and the objective then is to go after Danny. He's saying that Danny is a problem. Okay, you need to
Yeah.
figure out how to eliminate Danny like I eliminated my wife and daughters. Okay. And then the
Yeah.
second time that he's speaking with Jack, now the focus has shifted to Wendy. And Grady even mentions to Jack, he's like, she's stronger than what we thought.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean physically stronger, that means mentally
Mentally.
stronger.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's not susceptible to the programming that we're trying to get her with here because she hasn't been
Wow.
traumatized.
That just like I feel that, man. That's like I never saw it before, but that it's like some theories you're like, yeah, maybe, but you're like, no. That's like that has some really strength and power behind that theory.
And after Jack tries to kill her with the axe, is when she goes downstairs and she sees that Halloran. So that's one trauma, right? Jack
Mhm.
trying to kill her with an axe when he's trying to get into the bathroom to get her and Danny. Then Halloran pulls up. He goes downstairs. He hears the snowmobile pulling up, so he goes downstairs real quick, runs into Halloran, kills Halloran with an axe, and then Danny runs outside and he goes after chasing Danny. So then Wendy comes downstairs and Wendy sees Halloran's body dead on the ground. That's trauma number two. And after she sees Halloran's body dead on the ground is when she starts seeing all this weird stuff. So it's trauma.
Mhm.
Then then she sees the guy that's in the hallway that has the split down his head, which is symbolizing that she has been mind fractured, that she's in the
Mhm.
process of being mind controlled. He has a crack that's
Yeah.
going right down the blood that's going right down
Oh,
the center of
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah,
forehead.
yeah, yeah. And he says, something about, a party or something like that.
Nice party, isn't it?
Nice party, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice party, alright. If
And
you
then she
like
goes
being
upstairs, and then that's when she sees the guy dressed up in the bear costume, essentially performing
oral sex.
oral
So
stuff
disturbing.
to this gentleman in
Oops,
the
sorry.
suit.
Yeah, so totally disturbing. Now before I wanted to get into Laurel Canyon and stuff in the second half here, but before we do, um, this movie is not the book. And there's some imagery in there that Kubrick put that basically is saying, "To heck with you, Stephen King." Why do you think he's kind of basically telling you this is not Stephen King's book. This is better, or this is my story. Why do you
Because
like, yeah,
yeah,
go
because
ahead.
Kubrick is a master filmmaker. He's a book adaptationist. He takes books and then he creates movies out of them. And if you've noticed, most books do not create good movies. If you follow the book
Yeah.
verbatim, it just does not work. It's because it's different than writing something down over and over again than it
It's
is
different than a
to
screenplay.
visually show it. Yes. So things have to be changed around and things have to be rewritten. And I know that's not what people want to hear. They don't want to hear that. They want to make the faithful adaptation
Yeah,
of the original
they get
content, but that's
upset.
not the way that it works.
No.
Things that are
It
written
doesn't
down doesn't
translate.
exactly, it doesn't always translate to film. So that's like Kubrick saying like, Okay, King, you may be a really good fiction horror novelist. You might be able to make best-selling books, but you're not a filmmaker,"
And Stephen King proved that by doing his own version.
which was complete and total garbage. Yes.
Oh my god, that was so bad when the wolf guy jumped out, went, "Roar!" in the hallway at the little kid. I was like, "Is this Sesame Street, or is this supposed to be I'm supposed to be scared?"
Yeah, and the haunted bushes and the haunted swing set and like all it was a complete disaster. And that's
Yeah.
what people they don't realize is that things books that are written, it's very difficult to do a 100% faithful adaptation to the book because it just 9 times out of 10 does not transfer well to screen and the
Yeah.
visual aspects of the book, because you can go so many different places with a book. When you're reading a book, you're essentially inside of the reader's head, and it's hard to get inside of somebody's head by showing them visual aspects. But that's also what Stanley Kubrick was really good at. That's why his films had so much meaning behind them, because he was able to achieve that.
Mhm.
When people watch his films, they feel like they're actually there. They're actually a part of what's
Yeah.
being made. And that's why he wanted everything super realistic. He didn't want fake sets. If there was a
Yeah.
set, he wanted it to all be real things. Like in the storage room in The Shining, none of that stuff is fake props. All that stuff is
Yeah.
real food. It's all real things. And that's the way that he wanted it. He wanted it hyper realistic.
So I noticed, like, it's called A Clockwork Shining, so you're obviously, referencing A Clockwork Orange as well, because that is outright telling you there's mind control, and like, there's a really overt stuff, but you're tying the 2 together, and you bring some of the imagery and the themes from A Clockwork Orange into the documentary as well. What are the I don't know, for anyone who hasn't watched A Clockwork Orange, it can be graphic. Some people get upset by the film. Right? There's some graphic imagery in that as well, but what was the main themes from A Clockwork Orange that he's Kubrick's carrying on in The Shining? Is it the similar thing?
Well, it proves that Kubrick knew that MkUltra existed. So
Yeah.
MKUltra was essentially disclosed to the public in 75. So that was 5 years before the release of The Shining. And then A Clockwork Orange was
Was it
in
73?
70. I
70.
believe it was either
Yeah.
70. I'm pretty sure it was 70. I
No,
need
I
to
think
double
Barry
check.
Lyndon was 73 or something, and Clockwork Orange was like 70 or something, yeah.
So you got 5 years after and then 5 years before. So it's apparent that Kubrick knew about the MkUltra mind control programs just sheerly based off of the fact that he made A Clockwork Orange. Like the
Yeah.
entire movie is essentially drugging and making people watch movies to essentially control their mind. And there's a lot of similarities between A Clockwork Orange and The Shining. And there's several, like this photo here. Let me see if I can bring it up. This is kind of a well-known one, but it's one that I've been sharing a lot. So in the background of the shot, when Alex is walking through up in this right hand corner, it's kind of cut off right here, but it looks like reads adrenochrome. Okay. Then when you look at essentially the sequel to The Shining, Doctor Sleep, that's what the entire movie is essentially about. It's about these vampires that
Just a good film.
take little kids' souls. Okay, that's
And
the
it's
best
the
way that I can.
special they look for the special kids that really have the shining, like that power, like, intensely, and they're, like, literally yeah, it's brutal. I was like, "Holy god."
Yep, and then also in the Shining, you have like hints of that as well with the handprint on the back of the lady's dress that bumps into Grady that makes him spill the alcohol on Jack right here. So this lady, whenever Jack stands up from the bar, the lady walks in behind him. She hits Grady right here. Has the alcohol on the tray, spills it on Jack, and that's when they go into the bathroom, and he tries to get it off of Jack, but this handprint here now, people will say, "Oh, it's built into the dress." Well, it may be. I'm not saying that it was literally actually someone put red paint on the ass of this lady. I'm saying that looks like a freaking handprint. Now, regardless if it's a part of the dress or not a part of the dress, it's still there. And Kubrick approved it and put it in his movie. And it looks very similar to this Wilson, the volleyball, with a
Wow.
handprint on it.
That's
So there you
crazy.
go.
I'm
There it
just
is.
muting out my someone Amazon driver came to the door and the dogs are barking.
Oh no, not the dreaded Amazon driver.
The dreaded Amazon driver.
But this is
That's
just to
crazy.
prove and show that four-fingered handprints 100% do exist. Like that, it's on the freaking Castaway volleyball with Tom Hanks, which came out in year of 2000. I mean, it's way after The Shining, but it's just an example of exactly what it looks like. And you can all the information that's kind of come out about Tom Hanks there, which we're not going to get into because it's very censorable things. But you can
Yeah,
just
yeah,
put two
yeah.
and two together on your own there and do a little research into that.
So you go into Laurel Canyon and Hollywood and Lookout Mountain and all that kind of stuff it's like these places just popped up and didn't exist before, that it's suspicious. So we're not just being manipulated by drugs, we're also they're producing film content. How does Stanley Kubrick show that in the film? Does he show like an idea? Is he telling us that, the CIA is in on films and all this stuff in the culture and music?
Well, absolutely, they 100% are. I mean, that Lookout Mountain Air Force Base is just on the top of Laurel Canyon, and Laurel Canyon was literally where the entire music scene popularized from, was that area. And Kubrick lived in LA for a couple of years as well, so he had to have been familiar with the area and knew. I'm sure everyone at that time knew what was going on up at Lookout Mountain Air Force Studios.
Yeah.
Okay. So several films were made up there. Several prominent Hollywood actors had access to the place. They had top secret security clearance for the facility. Ronald Reagan had it, Marilyn Monroe had it, James Stewart, Cary Grant, like all of these famous people of the day had top secret security clearance for Lookout Mountain Air Force Base. You have to. Why is that? Why would
Wow.
they? Why would all these actors have all, where the military is filming top secret movies up there? There was more movies that were produced at Lookout Mountain Air Force Studio than all of Hollywood up until that point. So
That
what
is
were they
so
doing up there?
bizarre. Well, it's bizarre because a lot of these people that are involved all had like these tragic deaths, like Marilyn Monroe, Jim Morrison. They just, they and they got involved with politicians. So it's interesting how everything sort of has 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, absolutely. And also with like Lookout Mountain, there used to be a hotel that sat on the exact same location as to where the Lookout Mountain Air Force Base later was built, and it was called Lookout Mountain Hotel. So you got the Overlook Hotel in Stephen King's novel and in Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining, and then you have Lookout Mountain Hotel that was there that also burnt down. And at the end of Stephen King's book, The Shining, the hotel, the Overlook Hotel burns to the ground. Kubrick didn't do that in his version of The Shining, but then they did it at the end of Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to The
Hmm.
Shining. The Overlook burnt to the ground.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they put that in there, and it's so crazy. We have an interesting comment about adrenochrome on Rumble. Bill Dozer 74 says, I was just talking about The Shining and the messed up sequel, Doctor Sleep, literal adrenochrome harvesting. They call it steam when they torture special children to the end. The steam keeps them young. Did they? Is this like this elite adrenochrome stuff? You hear about this all the time. It's so bizarre.
And I really liked Doctor Sleep. I mean, it's not as, you know,
It's a different
cryptically,
film.
it's a way completely. I mean, obviously, it's not the same director, and but they use some of the same types of
Imagery.
locations and images. They use the carpet pattern of the floor. They go back to the Overlook, and they of course replaced Jack Nicholson's character, and they had another guy, which was a very big missed opportunity. They should have just brought Jack Nicholson back. That would have made it 100 times better. But I still really enjoyed it because it's essentially like psychic abilities, right? It's remote viewing. That's exactly what they were doing. They were bilocating, astral projection, astral traveling. I mean, that's what the little girl did the entire time. That's what the head vampire lady with
Woman.
the
The
with
hat.
the hat woman
Yeah.
would do as well. So they both had that type of ability, and it's essentially a technique that you're. It's like a very advanced form of remote viewing. And Ingo Swann
Yeah.
talked about this remote viewing ability, which is called perfect sight integration. I don't know if I mentioned it on when you were on my show, but that's essentially what it is. You're able to get into such a deep state of remote viewing that you're able to literally bilocate to another location.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
what they're doing in Doctor Sleep.
here's what's really weird about this stuff is it seems like the kids or the psychic shining people, they can do it themselves. It's like these evil people, they can't. They need your juice or your whatever to do it. They need the energy from other people. Like they're vampires, right? They can't produce it themselves. So that's an interesting because these children and even the older Danny character, they can do it themselves. They don't need to hurt or harm anybody or kill anyone.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting about that is that this in Doctor Sleep, I think that it's mentioned because when the old man dies, the hat lady is essentially like you've taken down rulers and emperor, basically meaning that this guy's lived for thousands of years.
Yeah.
He's seen cities rise, cities fall. He's seen it all essentially. So they've been doing it for a really long time. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think that that might be something that you can do to essentially live forever, but you probably have to have the ability as well, because whenever they go to recruit the curly hair girl, the I think she's like 15, she's 14 or 15
Mhm.
in the movie, when they go to recruit her at the movie theater, she had her ability. So stealing the essence of the children isn't creating the ability. Stealing the essence is making them to where they're essentially immortal. Doesn't
Mhm.
give them the ability. They already have the psychic ability or the shine.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the other, I was just thinking about this when I was looking at the images. You said something in the documentary. We're kind of going backwards here because we talked about the adrenochrome, and we know there's a lot of stuff we can't really say about that. But there's an image. I'm going to pop it right up here in the screen, and you can see it right in this left-hand corner on the wall. You say there's a Nazi symbol that you noticed. When did you notice this, and how does Nazism and fascism tie into this film? Like, what is Kubrick trying to say? Because I never noticed that until your documentary mentioned it to me.
Yeah, so I seen the movie on the big screen. Um, they were doing a re-showing of it for Halloween last year, so it would have been October of, not last year, but the year before, so the October of 2023. They were doing a special screening of The Shining in a big movie theater. So I got to see it really big. And this was before we started really working on the movie. And when you see something really big like that, that's meant to be seen in a theater, you can see things that you normally wouldn't watching it on a smaller TV or a smaller screen. And I was watching them walk through the gold room, and I looked back in the corner. I was like, because it was super prominent on the big screen, but I had never seen it when I was watching it on my TV. I was like, that's a freaking Nazi swastika in the background there. And that relates to what other people have seen as well with the end of the movie when the Kubrick fades the faraway shot of the picture on the wall, that when you scroll
Mm-hmm.
down, it looks like Jack
Uh,
gets like a little Hitler
yeah, the
mustache
Hitler
on his face.
mustache. Yeah, in the fade.
And then also you have, mind control not MK Ultra did not originate in Germany, okay, but they were doing, because that's an American term. MK Ultra is just describing mind control. The MK Ultra programs were a CIA program in America. So people get that confused, because I'll say, well, the MK Ultra started in Germany, and then they'll come back at me and be like, MK Ultra never started in Germany, blah 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 blah. Which
They could have been
they're
influenced. They
technically
bring some German Nazis over here, so
but they're technically right when they say that, because the
mm,
term MK Ultra did not exist as a form of mind control
right,
program until it was brought to the United States.
right.
But there's a lot of evidence that Nazi Germany was trying to figure out how to essentially brainwash and mind control people. That's a
Yeah.
fact. Okay, so the terminology with these people, you gotta be like somehow be perfect in everything single thing that you say, and not mess up anything, or
Well,
they just kind
and
of
I'm just gonna say this, when you guys hear someone talk on a podcast, it's hard to remember everything. You're here for an hour, and you're gonna catch them because you're sitting there watching. It's easy to do that, than, and when you don't know the difficulty of recalling information on a podcast, so it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because technically they are right, but it's a very nitpicky thing. And
Yeah,
whenever I say MK Ultra, I just mean mind control in general, because
mind
that's what the
control.
term relates to, right? And that's what people are familiar with mind control being associated with, is the CIA in the United States, in the MK Ultra programs, and all the sub projects that followed that. So it relates to what they were doing in Nazi Germany during World War II. Then with their mind control programs with what's his name? The head of the intelligence over there,
Oh, yeah.
Joseph Mengele,
Mm.
was essentially the head of all that in during World War II. So
Propaganda.
that's the connective tissue there, and that's probably why Kubrick had it in the film, is to let people know that this is a this is an experiment. We're running an experiment up here at this hotel, and he's also, talking about the origin of the MkUltra programs and the origins of mind control, which goes back to Nazi Germany.
What's interesting, the mind control. Now I've got two pictures of Jack. There he is in the famous "Here's Johnny" scene, which apparently he ad-libbed. And then here's the him just before when he's saying "little pig, little pig." That's a really interesting thing, the nursery rhyme. I don't know what it means or if it's substantial, but he's like just totally losing it, and he's, shouting a nursery rhyme and axing the door down to his family. Like he's totally gone. And they're like the iconic imagery that goes with the movie. Like that's why I rented the movie when I was little. It was the Jack Nicholson face was on the 80s cover with this kind of green and black cover, and that was the face. And I'm like, huh, that I should check that out. And I was like 10 years old. And Gen Xers got away with a lot. We got away with renting the craziest stuff when our parents had no idea what we were up to. That's kind of interesting.
Well, this is a crazy one right here. So whenever Jack pokes his head through the quarter panel and he says, "Here's Johnny," whenever he turns around and he hears Halloran pulling up in the snowmobile,
Mm-hmm.
we only see him knock out it would be the right hand corner panel if he was looking at the door, and it would be the left hand corner panel if the camera was turned
Oh,
around. So
for
whenever
both.
he turns around, both corner panels in this bottom panel of this image have been knocked out. When we only seen him knock out this one right here, where my cursor is circling.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's interesting. Now, I was going to ask a question, and I'm just totally, I went blank. I hate it when I do
It's all right.
I'm like, I hate it when I do it. There's something about fake deaths. Like, like, is it all just an illusion? Like, apparently, some people look. I know someone who's been to Jim Morrison's grave. He's this huge Jim Morrison fan. He's from England. And when I said something about maybe Jim Morrison's still alive, he thought that was hogwash or it was a fake death. Do you think? Do you think that some of this stuff they're just actors and they do this fake sort of thing, and but they're alive somewhere as somebody else?
I don't think everyone, but for sure, it's happened
Yeah.
100%, because a lot of these people are actors. I mean, that's what Jim Morrison. We showed in our documentary. He was in a commercial for Florida State University just a very short period of time before he went to California and he started the Doors. Okay, so he's an actor, and his dad ran the military for he was a high up naval commander and was responsible for the Gulf of Tonkin incident false flag that killed hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, so the reason that he was acting out and doing the things that he was doing is because he knew that he wasn't going to have any consequences for any of his actions. He was immediately going to be let off the hook because his dad is this high ranking military individual. So he could just go off and do whatever he wanted. Like he could jerk off on stage if he wanted. He could perform naked, whatever, be super drunk. I'm pretty sure that that's factual. I'm pretty sure that he did play with himself on stage one time, and then he got arrested.
Yeah, they got arrested for indecency.
Yeah.
Um, it's totally, yeah, it's totally true. Jim Morrison and the Doors was a boomer psyop. I wasn't into them until the movie came out with Val Kilmer in it, and I was young, and then the Doors were big. Trippy stuff, trippy stuff. They say, okay, here's what I was going to ask. Kubrick was this kind of guy who had a lot of time to make movies, which is really unfounded. Like it's not often that directors can take a year to film a film, like, and take as much time as they want. And I also read that he did a lot of prep time working up to the film, and he looked at a lot of Freudian stuff to base this on. And I'm thinking maybe I mean Freud. There's a whole bunch of crazy stuff about Freud and how he's a fraud and into mind control. And of course, we know his nephew Bernays was into propaganda and marketing and all that stuff and mind control. So
Subliminal messaging.
yeah, so it's all there in the background in Kubrick's researching. I would love to be able. There's a museum of Kubrick stuff. I think it's in England. I don't know if it was traveling, but I would love to be able to see it in his notes and stuff. But he did a lot of research on Freud, and Freud's concepts of family and abuse were, a lot of it was to cover up for rich people at the time who their daughters were going in and saying they were being SA for your channel. I don't care if it's said on my channel and all this stuff. And instead of listening to them, a lot of these people were wealthy elites. And Freud made up this, they're just projecting some neuroticism they have for their father, when it was a lie. It was actually true. This abuse was happening, and it's in the archives. Candace Owens was talking about it. So I find like anything Freud really disturbing. So when I realized that Kubrick read a lot of Freud for this, I was like, oh dear.
There's a lot of dark things that we could talk about that was going on with Kubrick, that you could possibly just kind of put two and two together. The audience can put two and two together. So whenever Kubrick died, there were men that showed up at his house. Mm-hmm. And they somehow had keys to his office. So only him and one other person ever had the key to Kubrick's office inside of his house. So his friend shows up at his house after he had passed away, and he's seen all of these men at his house, and they were essentially taking things out of his house. Like they had them all in like boxes, and they were just getting all the stuff out of his home. So you have to put two and two together.
Anything about that? She just shut up.
Yeah, you have to put two and two together there. But if you relate that to some other people,
they want to know what he's
recent
got.
Time, then you can get the answer to what I'm talking about.
Kubrick was obsessed with stationery and paperwork. Like he had like phenomenal amounts of filed paperwork and stuff. Like he had phenomenal amounts of information. And I think his wife kind of says, we gave it away to a foundation to have a museum. But right after his death, people come in. That's really suspicious. And yeah.
And then kind of look like what happened. Yeah, it is really suspicious. And I'm just going to kind of leave it there because, it doesn't do us any good to trash somebody like that or wring their name through the mud. But I'm sure that people can put two and two together, or they can just look into it on their own, and they'll find some things on it that'll probably shed more light on.
To kind of tie things up, because I don't want to keep you here too long. What's Kubrick's purpose of this? Like, why make a movie and risk your safety and put all this stuff out in a movie for, why put it there? Does he think no one's going to see it? Is he hoping people see it? Like, what do you think his objective is in putting all this code in his movies?
Well, I think as a creative person, you just want to put things in there that is interesting. Like I do that in my thumbnails for all of my shows. Mm-hmm. I put little hidden things in there that probably no one has ever seen. Only I know.
I'm going to go look at your thumbnails now.
And well, it's kind of hard to see because you can't really zoom in on them. So you have to take a screenshot and then zoom around the thumbnail to find stuff. So on one side, it's like a creative aspect to it, and to put something in there that that's only kind of meant for you. But I think that it goes over so many people's heads, especially of that time, that they don't even recognize exactly what it is that they're seeing. And that was kind of what was going on with Eyes Wide Shut as well. Like that was only a few people that were a part of these, types of clubs, which is a very few minority, would know exactly what he's trying to say. So therefore, it's
Mhm.
kind of like safe. But it's a testament to the movie that it's been what? How many years now? Like, it came out in 1980, 90,
So 45
2000,
years?
45 years, and no one has come out with this information until now. So it's like very well hidden and is definitely a subplot of the movie, and it doesn't take away from what everybody else thinks is going on either. If anything,
Right.
it adds to it. It adds to all of it.
Certainly, it gives it more dimension. So you don't think that Stanley Kubrick was controlled by the CIA and told to make these movies? You think he's doing this, he's self-driven all on his own?
It could flip either way, but I think that the type of person that Kubrick was, I feel like he doesn't listen to people. So if they were to tell
Yeah.
him to do something,
Yeah.
he's just going to flip them off and be like, "I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do what I want to do." And we see evidence
Mhm.
of that with Eyes Wide Shut. That's
Yes.
essentially exactly what happened. They wanted
Yep,
him to cut some things out of the movie. He wasn't having it. He didn't want it. He wasn't going to do it. It wasn't going to ruin his movie. And then,
he died.
yep.
And they cut it anyways. I don't know, I wonder if they burnt all that footage or it's somewhere, and one day someone will come up with it and we'll see all this Eyes Wide Shut, twisted real narrative. Because if you cut 20 minutes out of a movie, that's gonna change the whole story.
It does. And there's also the ending to The Shining that no one has ever seen.
That's
Their,
right.
their original ending.
I've seen images of it, but I heard that people saw it in, like, a test film, in, like, a test screening of the movie, and then they changed it and cut it out. I kinda like the ending that they did go, but it was a little ominous, the alternate ending. You can go ahead and explain it.
Yeah, so the original ending was completely different than the ending that we all know of today with, Jack essentially freezes to death and then it pans into the hotel and you see the picture on the wall, where Jack is, still there. It says July 4th in 1921. So the original ending was that Wendy wakes up in a hospital with Danny, and Ullman comes to visit her at the hospital and essentially tells her that everything that she had explained to the police and the doctors and the nurses and everything wasn't true. They didn't find any evidence of anything that she explained that happened up there, and that really tie and the we I personally 100% believe that if you would have left that original ending in there, that just completely gives away the entire movie. It's exactly like what I was talking about in the beginning of the show. Like, you don't give away the entire plot of the movie within the dialogue.
Mhm.
And that ending did not create any kind of mystery box. Now, what did create the mystery box is when he sent his editor to the testing of the movies where it was showing, and had him splice the reel to where it just has Jack immediately dead and it doesn't show the hospital scene and all that. So then in the original ending, Ullman then throws Danny the tennis ball that
Yeah,
Jack was bouncing off the wall, and
the one
also
that rolled up to him in the hallway.
exactly.
Mhm.
So that's the telltale sign that the whole thing was an experiment and they just went in and covered
Mhm.
the whole thing up. It was an
Yeah.
operation that was going on there, and they went in and cleaned it all up. And then that's why he came in and said, "Oh, well, everything that you explained to the police and everyone at the hospital as to what happened, we didn't find any evidence of it because
And
they went in and
that's
cleaned it
too
up."
close of an ending. That you're right, that ruins the mystery box. That it actually kills all the layers that are literally inserted in there. It really doesn't. It says this is the final outcome. This is the story. Instead, the what we get leaves it open so you can have all these levels of different messages and allow them to flow easier.
And that was ultimately Kubrick's goal, because we have Kubrick at the end of the film as the credits are rolling. He's talking about that very thing. He's like, I don't do very many interviews. I don't talk with people because I don't want to explain my film, because then that ruins the audience interpretation that they can get as they're watching my film. And he's essentially like, I love putting things in there that makes people think, well, was that on purpose or was it not on purpose? Were these all these continuity errors that we show some of them on the show here tonight?
Mhm.
Were these done on purpose or were these a mistake? And
Yeah.
just based off of the fact that he said that,
He's kinda
he,
gaslighting us.
he's aware and he knows.
Yeah.
So therefore, they all are on purpose.
He's actually making us, the audience, doubt our own senses too, and go a little crazy the same way Jack's going crazy, and they're like, "Did I see those twins? Did I do this? Is this" like, he's making us go, what's going on? I'm not sure."
Exactly.
Clever, clever.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what he's doing. Yep.
Wow, alright. Well, do you have any last messages or anything that you wanna say about The Shining before we tie off here?
Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks to everyone that's watching, your audience. I hope that you really enjoyed it, and please go out and rent, or I would rather you purchase the film, because it helps us out. And it's only like $5 more for you to purchase the movie, and then you'll have it forever, and you can go back and tell your friends about it, tell your family about it. And for my audience, I know that you've heard me go on about this, but it's my movie, and it's really important to me. And any opportunity that I can get to talk about it and come on shows like this and help promote it and get more eyes on it, I'm going to take that opportunity. So it's just a bonus episode for my audience over there on my side. But thank you all very much. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please support my movie so I can continue to do the work that I do. And
Well,
thank you guys.
that's great. And you guys can go on there and buy it's on Amazon Prime, and you can delve into it multiple times the way that Ryder has and many of us have with The Shining. There is stuff you miss. Like there's stuff Ryder's showing me now that I missed from the documentary, and things he's saying that I totally didn't, my brain didn't register. So you can watch it. Lots. Just purchase it. It's really good.
Yeah,
Thank
there's a
you so
lot of
much.
things in there that because it's really packed with information. It's a very
Hmm.
fast moving documentary. So, and I know people like to say, "Oh, well, just watch it a couple of times or whatever," but that's the reason that you want to buy it, because you're inevitably going to miss little nuances and things that are talked about within the movie. I mean, we have five people in the documentary. We got me, Jay Widener, Joe Atwell, Mark Devlin, Kathy O'Brien, and Walter Bosley. So we're all in the movie, and we're all sharing our what's going on. So to pick up some of the minor details and the things that we say, it's going to require a couple of viewings. And thank you very much, Melissa, for watching it to begin with, and then
Hmm.
rewatching it before we did the
I
show. I really
love
appreciate it.
I love all the theories on The Shining. It's one of my favorite horror movies, so I don't mind spending money on a really good documentary like that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to pop you into the green room and tie up the show. Just one moment here. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining the show. It's a really cool documentary. Please do go and support Ryder Lee and his documentary. We should all be supporting small podcasts like me. Ryder has his own podcast. I'm going to pop that up right now. You can find him on Raised by Giants, because even a lot of the podcasts we see out there now, they are like being funded by big money. They got huge audiences. They have the algorithm in their favor. So you have to support people like me, Ryder, smaller people who don't get the attention, because we talk about topics that are a little more fringe maybe, but it helps. So subscribe to me. But Ryder is on YouTube at Raised by Giants. So go there and just visit my website, please, and subscribe either on Rumble, X, or YouTube for the live streams. And you can also, all the links are there. You can subscribe on X. I've got a subscriber thing when I work on content. You can go to the audio podcast. There's tons of links for different things. That's genxonx.com. I thank you guys so much. I'm just going to end this stream right now. No intro, outro music. I really appreciate you guys, and take care. And yeah, stay spooky with The Shining. Go watch it right now. Go get his documentary, Prime, Amazon Prime.